The Red Keep had never felt so close, so airless. The walls pressed in with their crimson stone, and the heat of summer clung to every drape and tapestry as if the castle itself sweated for the king. Robert Baratheon lay propped on pillows, huge even now, though the life was spilling out of him by slow, stubborn degrees. His breath rasped. The bandages about his belly were dark where the wound wept through, and the smell of it, blood and rot and sour wine, made Eddard Stark's throat tighten. A king should not die like this, in a bed that smelled of ale and fever, with flies bold enough to land on the corner of his mouth. Robert's eyes found him, unfocused at first, then sharpening with the old familiar fury that had carried him through battlefields and feasts alike. "Ned," he breathed, and the name was a plea and an order at once. "You're too damned grim for a sick room." "I'd sooner be grim than false," Ned said, but the words came out softer than he intended. He had loved this man once like a brother. In another life, in another world, he might have carried him from the trident with his own arms, laughing at how the stag had taken a wound and still bellowed for wine. Robert tried to laugh now and turned it into a cough that shook him until Pycelle was shuffling forward with a cup and Barristan Selmy's steady hand supported the king's shoulders. "7 hells," Robert wheezed when it passed. "That bore. I should have split it from snout to arse." "Gods, I was drunk." "You were king," Ned said, "and you hunted. It is what you have always done. And you were always there to scowl at me after." Robert's gaze slid past Ned, toward the green silk by the hearth. Cersei Lannister stood like a statue carved to watch a tomb sealed, her golden hair unbound, her hands folded as if in prayer. The light from the fire painted copper along her cheekbones and made her eyes gleam like coins. Jaime Lannister lingered behind her, one hand resting on the pommel of his sword in a pose so casual it might have been a threat. Robert's mouth twisted. "My son," he said, and Ned's heart lurched at the word. "My son will be king." Ned felt the wolf head pin bite into his palm. The truth sat between them like a blade laid across a table. Bright, cold, impossible to ignore. He had given Cersei warning. He had told her to take her children and flee before Robert returned from the hunt. She had not fled. She had stayed, and Robert's blood was soaking into the sheets. A raven croaked somewhere out in the yard. A door shut. The Red Keep went on breathing around them, indifferent. Robert lifted a shaking hand, fingers thick as sausages, and Barristan guided a quill into it. "Bring the parchment," Robert rasped. Ned handed it over himself. The will, the last fragile line between law and chaos. Pycelle bent close, lips moving as he read the words aloud, his voice tremulous as candlelight. Robert's hand dragged the quill, blotting ink, each stroke an effort. When he finished, He let the quill fall, and for a moment the king's fingers curled weakly as if grasping at something unseen. "Protector of the realm," Robert said, forcing the words out as though they were a stone he had to spit from his mouth. "Until my son comes of age." Ned's eyes flicked to Cersei without his permission. Her expression did not change. If she felt fear, she did not show it. Robert's gaze caught his, heavy and intent. Don't let the Lannisters," his throat worked. "Promise me." "I promise," Ned said, and he meant it, though the promise was a noose tightening around his own neck. Robert's eyes fluttered. The strength that had been a storm in him ebbed away, leaving the room suddenly colder. Ned watched the king's chest rise, fall, rise again in a slow, stubborn rhythm. For a heartbeat, Robert's hand found Ned's wrist, an old warrior's grip reduced to a child's clinging. Then the grip loosened. The chest rose once more, shuddered, and did not rise again. The silence that followed was not empty. It was packed with the weight of what would come. Pycelle made a thin, keening sound. Barristan Selmy bowed his head as if in prayer. Cersei Lannister did not move at all. Ned stood with Robert's will in his hand and felt, with a cold certainty, the realm tip into freefall. The king's death did not ring a bell. No trampit sounded. There was no moment when the Red Keep acknowledged the change. Men simply began moving differently, faster, sharper, as if every footstep might be the one that decided the realm. Ned left the bedchamber with the will sealed in wax and his own thoughts sealed tighter still. The corridor outside was lined with guards who pretended not to watch him. He felt their eyes like fingertips on the back of his neck. Somewhere in the keep, Cersei was already speaking softly to men who would obey her more readily than any parchment. He walked as if the stone beneath his boots might break. He kept his face as hard as winter. Varys appeared as if he had been poured from shadow. "Lord Eddard," the eunuch said, hands folded over his belly. His voice was a gentle thing, a lullaby meant to calm children. It did not calm Ned. "The king is dead," Ned said. "So it would seem." Varys's eyes were soft and bright. "The gods are cruel in their timings. The court is delicate today." "Delicate," Ned repeated, tasting the lie in the word. A delicate thing could be handled carefully. This was a knife fight in a dark alley. "You have the king's last will," Varys observed, as if remarking on a cloak Ned wore. "That is a powerful thing to carry." "A lawful thing," Ned said. Varys inclined his head. "Law is a lantern in the night, my lord. Useful, but not always enough to keep wolves from your door." Peter Baelish's voice slid in before his body did. "Wolves, lions, stags." Littlefinger stepped from the side passage, smiling as though Ned had wandered into a feast. He wore a rich doublet today, and the mockingbird pin at his collar caught the torchlight with a cheerful gleam. "What a sad, sad day for the realm. I do hate sad days." Ned's jaw tightened. "The will must be presented to the council." "Of course," Littlefinger said. "Of course. And then what?" "You'll sit Joffrey Baratheon on the Iron Throne and teach him honor with a stern look." His smile widened. "Or you'll attempt to do what is right, which is nearly always the fastest way to die in King's Landing." "The truth is right," Ned said. "The truth is expensive," Littlefinger replied, and his voice sharpened for the first time. "And you are about to learn how few men pay their debts willingly." Ned looked past him, down the corridor where Lannister guards moved in pairs. They did not run. They did not need to. The Red Keep itself belonged to them, stone by stone, coin by coin, secret by secret. "I will summon the council," Ned said. "And Varys murmured, "will pray for you." Littlefinger's eyes glittered. "Before you do," he said, "there is the small matter of the city watch. They keep the streets. They keep the gates. They keep men alive or let them die. Gold buys their loyalty, and I happen to know where much of that gold sleeps." "You told me once they were loyal to the crown," Ned said. Littlefinger spread his hands. "The crown is a head. On a spike, Lord Stark. Loyalty is a purse. Shall we go speak to Janos Slynt? Unless you mean to do this without a sword in your hand." Ned's stomach churned. He had sent a rider in secret before the hunt, a letter written with careful words and steadier hatred than he liked to admit. Stannis Baratheon must know. If the realm had any spine left, it lay on Dragonstone. But letters did not swing swords. Men did. "Bring me to Janos Slynt," Ned said at last. Littlefinger's smile was immediate, bright as a knife. Of course. We'll make an honest man of him yet." They walked together, and Ned felt as if he were walking beside a man who had already measured his grave. When they gathered, it felt less like a council and more like a wake. The chamber smelled of ink and heat. The windows were shuttered to keep out the summer glare, and the lamps made the air greenish and sick. Ned stood at the head of the table where Robert had once sprawled with a cup in hand, laughing at matters that should have sobered him. Now the chair was empty, and the emptiness was a presence in itself. Cersei sat with her spine straight as a spear. She did not look at Ned. She watched the others, counting them, weighing them. Jaime stood behind her with the ease of a man who believed no law could touch him. Renly Baratheon leaned against the doorframe, restless as a hunting hawk in a cage, his eyes flicking toward the hall as if he expected swords to come storming in at any moment. Pycelle's hands shook as he adjusted his chain. Varys looked mournful, which made Ned distrust him more. Littlefinger looked amused, which made Ned want to strike him. Ned broke the seal. The wax cracked with a small, loud sound. He read the king's will aloud, each word a stone laid carefully in place. Protector of the realm, regent, the realm placed in his hands until Joffrey came of age. When he finished, silence held for half a breath. Then Cersei laughed softly, as if Ned had told a jest. "That is not what he meant," she said. "It is what he wrote," Ned answered. He held the parchment out, letting them see the king's own uneven script. Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Men write many things when they are drunk and dying. Robert Baratheon was king," Ned said. "His will is law." Renly's mouth twisted. "Law?" he said, half in scorn, half in despair. "Law won't keep the boy from the throne. Not here." Ned turned to him. "You are Robert's brother. Stand with me." Renly's gaze held his for a heartbeat, and Ned saw something honest there. Fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of losing. "Stand with you," Renly said. "And do what?" "Offer the crown to Stannis Baratheon, who will scrape the skin off the city with his justice. This realm needs a king men will love. This realm needs a king who is lawful," Ned replied. Renly gave a short, sharp laugh. "Then you're in the wrong city." He pushed off the doorframe. "Listen to me, Lord Stark. Take the children. Take them now. Joffrey Baratheon, Myrcella Baratheon, Tommen Baratheon. Take them into your custody. Call it protection, call it mercy, call it whatever you like. With the children in your hands, you can force Cersei Lannister to bargain." Cersei's head turned, slow as a snake. "Touch my children," she said softly, "and I will burn you alive." Ned felt his heart hammer. For a moment he saw it clearly. The only way to stop what was coming was to seize the children and hold them against their mother. Yet the very thought made bile rise in his throat. They were innocent in this, whatever their parentage. "You will not threaten the hand of the king," Ned said. "The king is dead," Cersei answered, and the words "we" rebel at last. "Long live the king." Littlefinger's fingers drummed lightly on the table. "We should adjourn," he said, as if suggesting a pause in a game. "Emotions run high. Let us give grief its due." Ned's eyes narrowed. "No." He stepped forward, the will still in his hand, and spoke the words he had dreaded since the first moment he learned the truth. "Joffrey Baratheon is not Robert's son." The chamber went still. Even Pycelle's trembling ceased. Cersei's smile did not falter. "Say that again," she whispered. "Your children are Jaime Lannisters," Ned said, forcing the words out as if they were shards in his mouth. "Not Robert's. The throne." Renly swore under his breath. Varys's eyes widened a fraction. Littlefinger's smile sharpened. Jaime's hand went to his sword. Cersei rose, slow and graceful, like a queen in a tale. "You have made a very grave accusation," she said, "and you have made it to men who will not forget." Ned met her gaze. "I have made it to men who must choose." Cersei's eyes swept the table, and Ned understood then that the choosing had already been done. Quietly, long before Robert's last breath. They moved quickly after that, so quickly Ned scarcely had time to taste the fear before he was forced to swallow it. He left the council chamber with Varys at his shoulder and Littlefinger murmuring that everything could still be arranged, that peace was a matter of coin and compromise. Ned did not answer. He sent Tommerd and his other men to gather Sansa Stark and Arya Stark. He ordered the gates watched. He sent a last message to the Tower of the Hand, a warning to any who might still be loyal. Then he went to the throne room, because if law still had a home in the Seven Kingdoms, it was there beneath the black blades of the Iron Throne. The hall was already crowded when he arrived. Lords in silk, knights in bright mail, servants pressed against the pillars with eyes wide. At the far end, the Iron Throne loomed like a nightmare given shape, and on it, already impossibly, sat Joffrey Baratheon. The boy wore gold as if he had been poured into it. His hair gleamed. His mouth curled in a smile that was too pleased, too hungry. Cersei stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on the arm of the throne, as if she already owned the blades. Ned's steps echoed. Every eye turned. He raised Robert's will. By decree of Robert Baratheon, he began, voice carrying, I, Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, am named protector of the realm until the rightful. You are not my protector, Joffrey said, and his voice cracked with youth even as it tried to mimic command. You are a traitor. A low murmur rippled through the hall. Ned's gaze locked on Cersei. You have no right, he said. Cersei's eyes were calm. I have every right, she replied. A mother protects her son. Ned's hand tightened around the parchment. The boy is not. Seize him, Cersei said, and the words were soft as a kiss. The gold cloaks surged forward like a tide. For a heartbeat, Ned thought of the bargain Littlefinger had promised, the city watch bought with honor and coin. He searched their faces for hesitation, for recognition, for any sign that they would stand aside. They did not. Janos Slynt's helmet gleamed. His mouth was a hard line. In the name of King Joffrey Baratheon, Slynt barked. Take the traitor. Ned drew his sword, not fully, just enough for steel to sing. His men closed around him. Gray cloaks, Northmen faces tight with grim determination. He saw the flash of Arya's hair in his mind and felt a cold fear for her, for Sansa, for the family he had dragged into this nest of vipers. The first gold cloak crashed into them. Then another. Shouts erupted.
Stilrang!
A man screamed. Ned parried a wild blow and shoved the attacker back. He was no young man, and his legs still ached from Jaime Lannister's earlier betrayal, but the North had put iron in his bones. He moved with the economy of a man who understood that every wasted motion was death. A Stark man went down, clutching his throat, blood spraying. Another took a spear in the belly and folded, eyes wide with disbelief. Ned's world narrowed to the shapes in front of him. Bronze helms, raised blades, the blur of fear. Jaime Lannister did not draw steel. He did not need to. He watched, expression empty, as if this were a tourney arranged for his amusement. Barristan Selmy stood with his hands on the pommel of his sword, unmoving. Ned met his eyes for a heartbeat, begging without words. Barristan's face was stone. The vows that bound him were chains, and the chains held. A club struck Ned across the back of the head. The world flashed white. He staggered. Another blow came, harder, and he fell to one knee. His sword slipped from his fingers. He reached for it. A boot slammed into his hand. Pain shot up his arm. The gold cloak swarmed him, pressing him down, crushing him beneath weight and iron and betrayal. Ned tasted blood. He forced his head up enough to see the throne above him. The boy king's delighted face, Cersei's calm gaze. This is treason, Ned rasped. This is power, Cersei answered. The last thing Ned saw before the darkness took him was the Iron Throne's black blades, sharp as lies. He woke to darkness that smelled of damp stone and old fear. At first, he did not know where he was. Pain throbbed behind his eyes. His mouth tasted of iron. When he tried to move, chains bit into his wrists, and the cold of the floor seeped into his bones. The black cells. He had heard of them. All men had. A place beneath the Red Keep where secrets were kept until they rotted, where men screamed until their voices broke. Water dripped somewhere near his ear, slow and patient. The sound could have driven a man mad. Ned forced himself upright, inch by inch. His legs screamed, the old injury flaring. He swallowed the groan. He would not give them the sound. A lantern glow appeared beyond the bars, soft as a candle in a wind. Varys stepped into view, his slippers silent on the wet stone. He carried the lantern himself, as if he trusted no one else with the light. Lord Eddard, he said, voice low, what do you want? Ned's throat felt scraped raw. Varys sighed, as if the answer pained him. To keep you alive. Ned stared at him. Why? You serve the crown. I serve the realm, Varys corrected gently. The crown is changeable. The realm is what bleeds when crowns clash. Ned's fingers curled against the chains. My daughters. Varys's eyes flicked away, just for a moment. Lady Sansa Stark is under Queen Cersei's protection, he said carefully. Lady Arya Stark is missing. A cold wave washed through Ned. Missing? Gone from her rooms. The guards cannot find her. Varys lifted the lantern, letting the light paint Ned's bruises. Some would call that luck. Ned shut his eyes, breathing through the fear. Arya was a wolf pup in a pit of lions. He had brought her here. He had promised her safety. He had failed. What does Cersei want? He demanded. Varys's mouth curved in something like sorrow. She wants you to confess. She wants you to say you plotted to steal the throne. She wants you to call Joffrey Baratheon the rightful king, and she wants the North to kneel. And if I do not? Ned asked, though he knew. Varys's voice grew softer. Then she will make an example of you, publicly. Ned thought of the Great September, the mob, the smell of heat and sweat and anger. He thought of Robert, dead in his bed, and of the boy on the throne smiling as men died for him. I will not name that child rightful, Ned said. Varys watched him for a long moment. Honor, he murmured. Such a dangerous thing in a city like this. It is all I have, Ned said. No, Varys replied. You have your daughters, and they have you. Consider which is more important. The words struck like a fist. Ned leaned forward until the chains pulled tight. If I confess, will you swear to me my daughters will be returned to Winterfell? Varys's face was pale in the lantern light. I can swear I will do what I can, he said. Swearing more would be another kind of lie. Ned's jaw clenched. He wanted to hate Varys. He wanted to blame him for every thread of this web. Yet he saw something in the eunuch's eyes that did not look like triumph. It looked like fear for a realm that was tipping toward fire. Footsteps echoed in the corridor above, then faded. The black cells listened. Cersei thinks she has won, Ned said. Varys lifted a brow. Has she not? Ned's eyes burned with exhaustion. He stared into the lantern flame until it blurred. Not yet, he whispered, and did not know if he spoke to Varys or to himself. Time in the black cells did not move like time above. It stretched and snapped, thick and thin. Ned measured it by the drip of water, by the ache in his leg, by the times the guard brought stale bread and a cup of water that tasted faintly of rust. He thought of Sansa in her pretty gowns, trying to smile as she had been taught, believing in songs that did not exist. He thought of Arya with her blade hidden and her defiant eyes. He thought of Catelyn's hands, warm around his, of Robb's solemn face, already carrying the weight of a lord's duties. He had written letters once when words could still move a world. Now even words were captive. When the door finally opened, it was not a guard who came. It was Cersei. She did not descend into the black cells herself. She stood at the top of the stair, in a pool of torchlight, as if the darkness might soil her. Jaime was beside her. 2 Lannister guards flanked them. Their armor gleamed. Their eyes did not. Ned forced himself to stand. Chains clinked. His wrists burned. Cersei looked down at him as one might look at a dog that had bitten. Lord Stark, she said, voice smooth, how unpleasant this must be. You are not suited for damp places. You did not come to offer me comfort, Ned said. Cersei's smile was thin. No, I came to offer you a choice. Ned said nothing. My son will sit the Iron Throne, Cersei continued. The lords of the realm will swear to him. The small folk will cheer him, because small folk cheer whoever feeds them and kills their enemies. Her eyes glittered. You will confess that you plotted treason. You will say you meant to set Stannis Baratheon over my son. You will beg mercy, and I will give it. Ned felt his stomach turn. Mercy, he said, tasting the word. From you. From me, Cersei agreed. Because I am not without mercy, Eddard Stark. I am a mother. Her voice sharpened. And I know what you fear most. His throat tightened. My daughters. Cersei nodded. Sansa Stark is safe. She leaned closer, the torchlight catching in her hair. She is as safe as she can be. while her father threatens my children's lives. I never threatened your children, Ned said, though even as he said it he saw Renly's face and heard his own mind whispering what must be done. Cersei's eyes were cold. You threaten the world they live in. That is enough. What of Arya?
Ned demanded.
A small flicker crossed Cersei's face. Annoyance. She is a stubborn little creature, she said. Like you, the city is large. She cannot hide forever. Ned's hands clenched until the chains bit. If you harm her, Cersei smiled again. If I harm her, it will be because you force me to. Jaime spoke then, his voice flat. Confess, Stark. Swallow your pride. Keep the girl alive. Ned looked at him. You pushed a boy from a tower, he said softly, and you speak to me of pride. Jaime's eyes flickered, just once, like a blade catching light. Then they went dead again. Cersei straightened. Oh, you have until tomorrow, she said. The people love spectacles. My son especially. She turned, her green silk whispering. Choose wisely, or choose honor. Either way, you will choose. When she was gone, the black cells felt colder than before. Ned sank back against the wall, trembling with a rage he could do nothing with. He saw Sansa's pale face in his mind, Arya's wild eyes. He had walked into the city believing law could hold it together. Now he understood the truth. In King's Landing, law was a story told by men with swords. They did not drag him to the Great September at dawn, as he had expected. They waited until the city was awake, until the streets were thick with people, until the air was hot enough to sour tempers. They wanted a crowd. They wanted witnesses. They wanted the realm to see honor kneel. Ned's chains were removed, but 2 guards held his arms as they marched him through the Red Keep and down into the city. The sunlight struck his eyes like a blow. He blinked hard, trying to see past the haze. The streets stank of sewage and sweat. Vendors shouted. Children ran between carts. Men spat as he passed, some in hatred, some in fear, some in simple curiosity. Word traveled faster than ravens in King's Landing. He kept his head up. He would not give them the sight of his shame, yet shame was not what burned in him. It was dread, sharp and endless. Somewhere in the city, Arya was still missing. Somewhere behind walls and silk, Sansa was trapped. They turned toward the hill of the Great September. The steps rose ahead like a path to execution. The bells did not ring, but the crowd pressed in as if drawn by the promise of blood. Then the world cracked open. A shout rose from the far end of the square. Panic, sudden and contagious. People surged, bodies crushing, and the guards holding Ned's arms tightened in alarm. A cart overturned near the fountain, spilling cabbages and screaming children into the street. Someone threw a stone. Another followed. A gold cloak swung his baton at a man's head, and the man fell, blood blooming bright. The crowd roared. Ned's guards yanked him forward, trying to force a path. The press of bodies swallowed them. A woman stumbled into Ned, clutching his cloak, eyes wide with terror. A man shoved past, knocking one of the guards sideways. Ned's foot caught on a fallen basket and he lurched. A hand seized his elbow, strong as iron. Move! A rough voice snarled in his ear. Ned turned his head and saw a familiar, scarred face beneath a cowl. Yoren of the Night's Watch, his beard bristling, his eyes hard. For an instant Ned thought he was imagining it. Then Yoren shoved him, not toward the September, but sideways into a narrow alley between 2 crooked houses. What? Ned began. Shut your mouth, Yoren growled. If you want your head on your shoulders, shut it. A gold cloak lunged into the alley behind them, baton raised. Yoren stepped forward and drove a dagger into the man's thigh. The cloak screamed and fell, and Yoren dragged Ned over him, boots slipping in mud. They ran. Ned's leg protested with every step. His lungs burned. The city blurred into a maze of stink and shouting. They rounded a corner and Ned saw, in the shadow of a doorway, a small figure with a knife clenched tight in her fist. Arya. For a heartbeat Ned forgot pain, forgot fear, forgot the realm. Arya, he breathed. Her eyes locked on him, fierce and wet. She did not cry out. She did not run. She moved, quick as a cat, darting from the doorway to clutch his SL. Eve, as if she feared he might vanish if she let go. "You're real," she whispered. "I'm here," Ned rasped, and his voice shook. He wanted to gather her into his arms, to crush her to him until nothing could take her away. There was no time. Yoren shoved them both toward a hay cart waiting at the alley's mouth. "In," he snapped. Ned lifted Arya first, then hauled himself up. The hay smelled sweet beneath the city's filth. Yoren threw a tarp over them and climbed onto the driver's seat with the ease of a man who had spent his life running from trouble. The cart jolted forward. Through gaps in the tarp, Ned saw gold cloaks surge past, shouting orders, their bronze helms gleaming wet in the rain that had begun to fall. Arya pressed her face into Ned's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her tight, and listened to the city rage behind them. For the first time since Robert's death, Ned Stark was moving without chains. They left King's Landing like thieves in the night. Yoren took them with his recruits, a ragged line of boys and men bound north for the wall. Ned wore a plain cloak and kept his head down. Arya cut her hair with a stolen knife and smeared dirt across her cheeks, furious at the indignity but understanding the necessity. The road was long. The realm was longer. News traveled even here. In villages they passed, men spoke of King Joffrey Baratheon's coronation with bitterness or indifference. They spoke of Eddard Stark's treason with relish or disbelief, depending on the tongue. They spoke of the Queen's men searching the city, of rewards for a missing girl, of wolves to be hunted. Ned listened and said nothing. Every word was a nail in his own coffin. At an inn on the King's Road, a messenger found them. Not a raven. Ravens did not follow fugitives. A man on a hard-ridden horse, cloak soaked through, face drawn with exhaustion. He did not speak openly. He slipped a folded scrap of parchment into Ned's hand as he passed, then rode on without meeting anyone's eyes. The parchment held 2 lines, written in a hand Ned knew as well as his own, Catelyn's hand. "Riverrun. Hurry. Robb has called the banners." Ned's heart twisted. Robb, his son, forced into a lord's mantle too soon. Ned had wanted to spare him this. He had wanted to return to the north with his family whole, with the realm's rot far behind them. Now the rot had reached up and taken him by the throat. They left Yoren near the crossroads, where the Night's Watch turned toward the neck. Yoren grunted at Ned as if reluctant to admit to kindness. "You owe me nothing," he said. "Just don't make me regret it." "I owe you my life," Ned answered. Yoren spat into the mud. Don't go dying stupidly, then." Ned took Arya and rode hard east with 2 men Yoren trusted, through rain and mud and fields trampled by armies already moving. Smoke rose on the horizon in places it should not have. The Riverlands were burning, and the war had barely begun. They reached Robb's camp near Riverrun on a gray afternoon. Direwolf banners snapped wet in the wind. Men in mail and leather moved with purpose. Horses stamped and snorted. The air smelled of wet grass and steel. When Robb saw him, the boy froze as if struck. Then he crossed the distance in 3 long strides and wrapped his arms around Ned with a force that nearly stole Ned's breath. "Father," Robb said, voice breaking. Ned held him back, hands on his shoulders, and looked into the face that was his and Catelyn's both. There was grief there and anger and something heavier, responsibility. "You have done what you must," Ned said. Catelyn came then, and the world narrowed to her arms around him, her fingers digging into his cloak as if she feared he would vanish again. She did not speak at first. She simply held him, trembling. Arya clung to Catelyn's side, her fierce eyes finally spilling tears she had refused to show the road. When Hay sat by the fire later, with Brynden Tully's sharp gaze watching the trees and the camp's murmurs threading the darkness. Ned told them everything. The incest, Robert's will, the betrayal of the gold cloaks, the black cells, the escape. Robb listened with his fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. Catelyn listened with her face pale and rigid, the way she looked when she was holding herself together by will alone. And Sansa? Catelyn whispered when Ned finished. Ned's throat tightened. She is in the Red Keep, he said. A hostage. Catelyn's eyes closed as if struck. Robb's breath hissed through his teeth. We will get her back, Robb said, and the words sounded like a vow made to gods who rarely listened. Ned stared into the fire. We must be careful, he said. We must not let anger decide our steps. Anger is all the realm has left, Brynden Tully muttered. Ned lifted his head. The realm still has law, he said. Stannis Baratheon is Robert's heir. If we move with purpose, if we stand for the rightful claim, then the North will not be alone. Robb's gaze sharpened. And if Stannis Baratheon will not bend? He asked. Then we do not bend, Ned answered, and felt the words settle into him like winter. In King's Landing, the city answered fear the only way it knew, with hunger and rumor. Tyrion Lannister arrived to find the gates thick with soldiers and the streets thick with anger. He rode beneath the arch with Bronn at his side and the taste of trouble already on his tongue. The city smelled like summer rot. Fish left too long in the sun, sweat trapped in alleyways, smoke rising from cook fires and something darker. A gold cloak shoved a beggar aside to clear the road for a lord's carriage. The beggar spat a curse and earned a baton across the mouth for it. Blood splashed the cobbles. The crowd hissed. Tyrion watched it all with narrowed eyes. Joffrey's already making friends, he murmured. Bronn grinned. Friends are expensive, he said. He seems more the type to collect enemies. They climbed toward the Red Keep, passing talk in the streets. Some swore Lord Eddard Stark had confessed and begged mercy. Others swore he had been dragged to the September to die. A woman selling apples whispered that she had seen a wolf flee through the rain like a ghost. A man in a ragged cloak claimed the hand had turned into a direwolf and bitten a gold cloak's face off. In King's Landing, the truth was only one rumor among many. Inside the Red Keep, the air was cooler but no less foul. Perfume tried to drown fear and failed. Tyrion found his sister in a chamber heavy with gold and silk, standing at a window as if she could will the city into obedience. Cersei turned when he entered, her expression sharp. You came quickly, she said. I heard you crowned a boy king and started a war, Tyrion replied. I do try not to miss family gatherings. Cersei's eyes flashed. Lord Stark has fled. Tyrion lifted his brows. Fled? From the Black Cells. Cersei's mouth tightened. Someone helped him. Tyrion thought of Varys's soft voice and Littlefinger's smiling eyes. Someone always helps someone, he said. Where is Joffrey? Asking for heads, Cersei snapped. He wants Stark's head. He wants the girl's head. He wants everything he cannot have. Her voice softened, just a fraction, and Tyrion caught a glimpse of the fear beneath her rage. If Stark reaches the north, the lords will rise. They'll rise regardless, Tyrion said. You have a hostage. Cersei's gaze went hard. Sansa Stark, she said. She will keep them in check. Tyrion's stomach tightened, though he did not show it. He had never had much love for the Starks, but the idea of a frightened girl held like a chain sat poorly with him. Chains can be broken, he said. Cersei's eyes sharpened. Then we will tighten them. Later, in the throne room, Tyrion saw his nephew on the Iron Throne and felt, with a chill, how wrong it looked. The blades behind Joffrey seemed too large, too hungry. The boy lounged with false ease, tapping his fingers on the arm of the throne, as if the metal itself amused him. When a petitioner begged for food in the Flea Bottom district, Joffrey laughed. When a knight asked for leave to hunt the escaped traitor, Joffrey's eyes shone. Bring me Eddard Stark's head, Joffrey said, and it was not a command for justice. It was a child demanding a toy. Tyrion watched, and in the shadows he saw Littlefinger whispering to men with greedy eyes. He saw Varys watching from a balcony, his face drawn tight. He saw the hound standing like a wall of scar and steel beside Sansa Stark, the girl's pale face turned toward nothing. The realm was not a game. But in this castle, a boy king played it anyway. The letter reached Riverrun 3 days after Ned did, carried by a rider who looked as if he had been carved out of exhaustion. It was sealed in black wax, stamped with the crowned stag of House Baratheon and the flaming heart of a god Ned did not trust. The sight of it made the hair at the back of his neck rise. He broke the seal by firelight, with Robb and Catelyn watching. Arya slept nearby, curled like a small animal, safe for the moment. The camp murmured beyond the tent, men talking in low voices, sharpening blades, praying to gods who seldom answered. The words on the parchment were hard, spare, and burning with certainty. Stannis Baratheon named himself the rightful king. Stannis Baratheon called Joffrey Baratheon a bastard born of incest. Stannis Baratheon commanded the lords of the realm to declare for him or be named traitors. And there, in the middle of it, was Ned's name, written like an iron nail driven into the page. Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, had sworn to Robert Baratheon and held his last will. Eddard Stark was called to stand for the truth he had spoken. Ned lowered the parchment slowly. The fire popped, sending a spray of sparks up into the dark. Robb's face was set, but his eyes held a question. Catelyn's hands were clasped so tightly her fingers had gone white. "We have our lawful king," Ned said at last. "And our war," Catelyn whispered. From outside the tent came the sound of a horn. One long blast, then another. A rider was arriving. Another message. Another piece of the realm breaking into their hands. Brynden Tully entered without waiting for permission. Rain on his cloak, his expression grim. "Scouts report Lannister forces moving east," he said. "Tywin Lannister is marching. He means to break the Riverlands before we can breathe." Robb's fist clenched. "Then we ride," he said. Ned's mind moved like a blade sliding from its sheath, cold and quick. Tywin Lannister would not give them time. King's Landing would not give them mercy. And somewhere behind walls of red stone, Sansa Stark sat with fear in her belly and the Queen's eyes on her throat. Ned rose. The tent felt too small for what was coming. "We ride," he agreed, and his voice was iron. But not blindly. He stepped to the tent flap and looked out at the camp. Banners snapping wet, men moving with purpose, torches like fallen stars. The Riverlands lay beyond, scarred and waiting. The road to King's Landing stretched south like a wound. Thunder rolled in the distance, deep and slow, like the sound of giants walking. For a moment, Ned thought of the wall, cold stone, endless snow, and the letter he had received weeks ago from Jeor Mormont, full of worry and strange reports. Dead men walking, shadows in the forest. A different war gathering in the north while the south tore itself apart. He swallowed the thought. There would be time to fear monsters later. First, he had to survive men. Ned Stark stepped into the rain with Stannis Baratheon's El. Eddard in his hand and the weight of a kingdom trying to crush him. And he made himself a promise he did not speak aloud. He would not die in chains again. Riverrun had never been so full, nor so loud. They packed the great hall until the air grew sour with sweat and wet wool. Men tracked mud across polished stone, leaving the river in their boots and war in their eyes. Torches hissed as rain-laden drafts slipped through arrow slits. The Tully banners, leaping trout on blue and red, hung heavy and damp, as if the cloth itself mourned the peace that had drowned. At the center, a trestle table had been cleared and covered with maps. They were not fine things drawn for maesters in quiet rooms. These were working maps, corners curled, edges smudged with blood, marked with charcoal and knife scratches. The trident sprawled across the parchment like a great vein, and around it the names of towns and bridges looked suddenly fragile, as if a hard wind might blow them away. Great John Umber leaned over the table like a boulder poised to roll. "Why do we sit?" he bellowed, spittle flying. "Why do we scratch at parchment while lions burn our lands? Give me leave and I'll ride straight for Harrenhal. Rip Gregor Clegane's head off and feed it to his own dogs." A ripple of rough approval answered him. Steel whispered in scabbards. Men wanted motion. Men wanted vengeance. Men wanted the simple relief of striking something that could bleed. Robb Stark did not flinch. He sat with gray wind at his feet, the direwolf's tail still, his eyes gold as candle flame. Robb's face had changed since Ned last saw it in Winterfell. The boy's softness had been planed away by fear and responsibility. The lines around his mouth were firmer now, and the look in his eyes was no longer the look of a son asking permission. It was the look of a lord measuring consequences. Ned rose slowly, forcing his leg to obey. Pain licked up his thigh, hot and persistent. He ignored it. He had ignored worse. "We sit because we cannot afford to ride blind," Ned said, and his voice, though hoarse from roads and sleepless nights, carried through the hall. It was not a shout, but it did not need to be. Northmen quieted for winter. Their blood remembered that tone. Great John swung toward him, bristling. "And who are you to tell me how to fight, Lord Eddard? You lost your fight in King's Landing." The words struck like a thrown stone, sharp and public. A murmur ran through the hall. Some in shock, some in crude agreement, some in fear. Catelyn's hand tightened on the edge of the table. Ned held Gracjan's gaze. "I lost because I trusted men who sold their oaths," he said. "I will not make that mistake again." Gracjan's nostrils flared. His hand went to his sword. Grey Wind's head lifted. The direwolf did not growl. He did not need to. His lips peeled back just enough to show the curve of teeth, and the sound that came from his chest was low, almost conversational, like thunder heard far off. It made the hairs on men's arms rise. Robb did not move. "Lord Umber," he said, calm as a frozen lake. "Sit down." Great John stared at him as if he had not Art. Then he looked at Grey Wind's eyes, steady, bright, ancient in their animal certainty, and something in the big man's face shifted. He spat on the floor, a wet, ugly sound. "Fine," he growled. "Speak your plan, then. But if your plan is waiting, I'll carve it into your bones." Ned did not blink. "My plan is taking Jaime Lannister alive." That drew them in. Even Gracjan's mouth shut. Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked up. Edmure Tully's breath caught. Brynden Tully's mouth curled, more approval than smile. "Jaime Lannister rides in the Riverlands with a swift host," Ned continued. "He believes the North will charge at Tywin Lannister like a bull at a banner. Tywin expects Robb to meet him on open ground." Ned's finger traced a line along the green fork. "We will let Tywin think that. We will send a force here, large enough to be seen, loud enough to be believed. And while Tywin meets our decoy, we will take Jaime in the woods by Riverrun." Robb leaned forward, eyes fixed on the map. "The Whispering Wood," he said quietly. Brynden Tully agreed. "The Kingslayer's proud. He'll ride where he thinks he can win. He'll chase glory into trees." Gracjan's grin returned, this time hungry. "A trap," he rumbled. "Good. Let me lead it." "You will," Robb said, and Gracjan's grin widened. Ned saw the flicker in Robb then, excitement, fear, the sharp taste of proving himself. Ned felt it too, bitter and familiar. The boy would lead men into death and call it duty. Ned had done the same. Catelyn's voice cut through. "And Sansa?" she asked, low, steady. "Jaime Lannister will not give us our daughter." Ned's throat tightened. He forced his gaze away from the memory of Sansa's face behind Red Keep walls. "Jaime Lannister will buy us time," he said. "Time to break Joffrey's hold. Time for Stannis to move. Time to put King's Landing in fear of the truth." Edmure bristled. "Stannis Baratheon," he said, like the name tasted of ash. "You would kneel to him? A hard man, a cold man, a lawful man," Ned replied. "And law is all that stands between this realm and slaughter without end." Roose Bolton's voice slid in, soft as silk. "And who leads the decoy?" he asked. Ned looked at him for a long moment. Roose's face was calm, his eyes pale, his mouth almost gentle. Gentle men did not wear Bolton-flayed men on their banners. Gentle men did not look so comfortable while war gathered like a storm. "You," Ned said at last. A faint stirring ran through the hall. Roose inclined his head as if accepting a cup offered at table. "As you command." Robb's jaw tightened. Ned could feel the boys' distrust like heat. Ned shared it, but they needed a man who could bleed an army without breaking it. A man who would obey orders and not chase glory into disaster. Roose Bolton had no glory in him, only calculation. "Then it's decided," Robb said, and his voice was the voice of Winterfell, steady and sure. "We march at dusk." As the lords began to break apart, some with eager smiles, some with grim faces, some whispering their own schemes, Ned felt Arya slip to his side like a shadow. "You're really doing it," she whispered, eyes bright. Her hair had been hacked short, uneven as a boy's. Dirt still clung beneath her nails. She looked more like a street rat than a lord's daughter, and Ned loved her all the fiercer for it. "We must," Ned murmured. Arya's hand tightened around the hilt of the knife she hid in her sleeve. "I want to come," she said. Ned looked down at her and saw the wolf in her plain as day. He wanted to say no. He wanted to push her behind walls and locks and pretend he could keep war from touching her. But war had already touched her. It had already tried to take her throat in King's Landing. "You stay close," he said instead. "And you listen." Arya nodded like it was an oath. Ned turned back to the map. The lines were just ink, but beneath them men would bleed. Somewhere south, a boy king sat on blades and smiled. Somewhere north, the wall stood quiet and cold, and things older than crowns stirred in the dark. Ned Stark laid his hand on the trident and felt the realm's pulse under his palm. Fast, frantic, failing, and he did not let himself hesitate. They rode into a land that had begun to die. The Riverlands were green in summer, fat with water and wheat, a place of soft hills and bright streams. Now the green was stained. Smoke drifted like a sickness across the horizon. Here a field lay trampled into mud by boot prints and hooves. There a farmhouse stood blackened, its roof collapsed like a broken spine. Crows perched on fence posts, bold and watchful, their beaks wet. The road itself had been chewed to slurry by armies. Wagons sank to their axles. Horses snorted and slipped. Men cursed under their breath and wiped rain from their eyes, as if water could wash away what they were about to do. Ned kept his seat by stubbornness and habit. Each jolt of the saddle sent pain flaring through his leg, but he did not allow himself to show it. A lord who limped visibly invited hungry looks, pity from friends, calculation from foes. He would not give either. Robb rode ahead, cloak clinging, hair damp, his back straight. He spoke little, saving his voice for commands. Yet Ned watched him continually, reading the small signs. How the boy's shoulders tightened at the smell of burned wood. How his jaw set when they passed bodies and ditches. How his eyes flicked to gray wind as if drawing strength from the beast's steady presence. Arya moved among the column like she belonged there. She wore a rough-spun tunic and a hood, and any stranger might have taken her for a stable boy. Only Ned saw the way she watched everything. How her gaze snagged on the dead and did not look away. How her hand never strayed far from the knife she'd claimed like a piece of herself. When they came upon a village half smashed and half empty, the remaining small folk emerged cautiously, like animals testing a trap. A woman with a baby on her hip stared at the direwolf running alongside the horses, eyes wide as moons. A boy no older than Bran clutched a broken rake like a spear. Edmure Tully had said Gregor Clegane's men had ridden through these parts. Ned saw the proof. Doors kicked in, windows smashed, a well fouled with something dark. On a post by the road, a man's body hung with a rope around his neck, head slumped forward, feet barely brushing the mud. His hands were bound behind him, and someone had carved a crude lion into his chest. Catelyn made a sound that was half breath, half sob. Bryndon's face went hard as flint. Robb reined in. "Take him down," he ordered quietly. Men moved. A ladder was found. The body was cut free and laid in the wet grass. The dead man's eyes stared at nothing, fixed and accusing. Ned dismounted slowly, pain flashing bright, and knelt by the corpse. He closed the man's eyes with 2 fingers. "This is what Tywin Lannister calls peace," Brynden Tully said. Ned rose, rain sliding down his face like tears he would not shed. He turned to the villagers who had gathered, their faces pale, their mouths tight. "I am Eddard Stark," he said, "Lord of Winterfell." A murmur ran through them. Surprise, confusion, hope. Word had traveled, then, even through smoke and fear. Some had thought him dead. Some perhaps had prayed for it, believing the world kinder if honor stayed buried. "Anyone who has harmed you will answer for it," Ned said. The words were simple. He made them heavy with promise. "We will feed those we can. We will leave coin where we take." He looked from face to face. "Tell others. The North has come." A man stepped forward, eyes red from smoke and grief. "My daughter," he rasped. "They took her." Ned's chest tightened. Around him, men shifted, anger rising like heat. Arya's fingers curled into a fist beneath her sleeve. "We will find her," Ned said, though he did not know if it was true. The realm was full of stolen daughters. His own sat behind enemy walls. The man stared at him, disbelief and desperate need warring in his face. Then he bowed his head, the gesture small and broken. As they rode on, Arya edged closer to Ned. "They did that," she whispered, nodding toward the burned farmstead receding behind them. "Because they can. Because men let them," Ned corrected. Arya looked up at him, eyes fierce. "Will you let them?" Ned thought of Cersei's calm gaze, of Joffrey's pleased smile, of the gold cloaks surging like a tide. He thought of the corpse's carved lion. He thought of Sansa's pale face in a gilded cage. "No," he said, and the word was the only honest thing left in him. Gray wind ran ahead into the rain, silent as a shadow, and Ned watched the direwolf's shape move through the haze like an omen. Somewhere in the woods, the Kingslayer rode with laughter in his throat, believing himself untouchable. Let him believe, Ned thought. The trap was closing. Night in the Whispering Wood was a living thing. The rain had eased to a mist, clinging to leaves and cloaks alike. The trees stood thick and close, their branches tangled overhead, turning moonlight into thin silver threads. Every sound was muffled, hoofbeats softened by wet earth, whispers swallowed by bark and moss, the distant rush of the tumblestone like a low, constant breath. Robb Stark waited in the dark with men who would follow him into hell. Great Jon Umber loomed beside him, crouched with a surprising patience, his huge hands wrapped around the shaft of a spear. Theon Greyjoy was there too, his smile tight, his eyes bright with the thrill of danger. Northern riders held their horses' mouths to keep them from snorting. Faces were painted with mud to kill the shine of skin. Ned waited farther back, where the woods thickened. His leg could not bear the charge Robb intended, and Ned would not pretend otherwise. He hated the limitation, hated feeling the fight happening beyond his reach, but he would not gamble men's lives on pride. He stood with Catelyn and Brynden and a handful of archers, ready to close the trap, to cut off retreat, to take the man they needed alive. "Are you certain he'll come?" Catelyn whispered, voice barely there. "He's proud," Brynden murmured. "Proud men come." Ned did not speak. He listened. A faint clang drifted through the mist, metal brushing metal. Then the glow of torches, dimmed by trees, like a line of fireflies crawling through the dark. Horses moved between trunks, their flanks steaming. Men muttered in low voices. The scent of wet leather and oil reached Ned, sharp and unmistakable. Then he saw him. Jaime Lannister rode into the glen with his head high, gilded armor catching what little light the wood allowed. He looked like a prince in a story meant to make small boys dream of glory. His cloak was crimson and heavy with rain. His helm was off, and his golden hair lay damp against his temples. He held his sword loosely, almost lazily, as if the very idea of danger amused him. The Kingslayer's men fanned out behind him, torches held aloft, laughter low. "Stark," Jaime called into the trees, voice ringing. "Come out. I grow tired of chasing you." Robb did not answer. He waited until Jaime's horses were deep in the glen, until the Lannister line had committed to the open space, until the woods behind them seemed less like shelter and more like a closing fist. Grey Wind moved first. The dire wolf slipped from shadow to shadow, silent as falling snow. He struck the rear of the column with a suddenness that turned laughter into screams. A horse reared, eyes rolling white, as Grey Wind's jaws closed on its throat. The animal collapsed, thrashing. A man fell beneath it, crushed, and his scream cut off. Jaime's head snapped around. What? The horns sounded low, savage, northern. Then Robb surged from the undergrowth like a wolf bursting from a den. Northern riders crashed into the Lannister flank. Hairs thrusting, swords biting. Great John Umber roared and split a man's skull with an axe, blood spraying dark in the torchlight. Chaos exploded. Lannister men tried to form a line, but trees stole their space and mud stole their footing. Horses collided, screaming. Torches fell, spitting sparks into wet leaves. The glen became a churn of steel and animal panic, of shouted orders swallowed by fear. Jaime Lannister fought like the man the songs claimed he was. He carved a path through bodies, his sword a bright arc in the dark, his movements fluid even in the mud. He cut down a northern rider, then another. He drove toward Robb with a reckless fury, as if killing the boy would end the world's argument at a stroke. Robb met him head-on. For a heartbeat, the two were framed by torchlight and mist. Wolf and lion, youth and pride, two blades flashing. Jaime's strength was terrifying. Robb's desperation made him steady. Grey Wind lunged toward Jaime, but a Lannister man threw himself between, and the dire wolf tore the man's throat out in one savage motion. Ned's heart hammered as he watched, helpless in his anger. Robb was too young for this, too precious. Yet the boy did not retreat. Jaime swung hard, aiming for Robb's neck. Robb ducked, blade up, catching the strike with a shriek of steel. The force jarred Robb back a step, boots sliding. Jaime pressed, smile fierce. "Is this all the North has?" he snarled. Robb's eyes flashed. "No," he said, and Grey Wind struck again. This time not at Jaime, but at Jaime's horse. The horse screamed as teeth sank into muscle. It reared, unbalanced, and Jaime fought to keep his seat. In that heartbeat of instability, Great John Umber barreled in, a wall of meat and rage, and slammed the butt of his spear into Jaime's chest. Jaime toppled into the mud. A dozen blades pointed down at him. For a moment Jaime lay there, hair plastered to his face, mud streaking gold. His chest rose and fell hard. His eyes flicked over the ring of men, then up to Robb, who stood with his sword steady despite the tremble in his arms. Jaime's mouth curved. "Well," he said, breathless, almost amused. "This is new." "Yield," Robb commanded. Jaime's gaze sharpened. He looked for an opening, for a chance to die gloriously rather than be taken. Ned saw it, saw the part of Jaime that would rather spit in fate's eye than bend. Ned stepped forward from the trees then, and torchlight caught his face. Jaime's smile faltered for the first time. "Lord Stark," Jaime said softly, as if tasting a ghost. "I heard you were dead." "So did I," Ned replied, voice like winter. "Drop your sword." Jaime's eyes flicked to Ned's leg, to the stiffness there, to the pain Ned refused to show. Then his gaze returned to Ned's face, and for a heartbeat something passed between them. Old blood, old words, an old boy falling from a tower. Jaime's fingers loosened. The sword fell into the mud with a wet sound. Around them, the whispering would held its brait. And Ned Stark felt the trap shut completely. By dawn, the Kingslayer was a prisoner. They kept Jaime Lannister in a stone chamber that smelled of river damp and old mortar, with a barred window too high to reach. He sat on a bench with chains at his wrists, his golden hair still wet from the night, his mouth set in the sort of smile that refused to admit fear. Without his armor, he looked younger, still handsome, still arrogant, but more human, less myth. Ned stood before him with a lantern in hand. The light painted Jaime's face in harsh angles, making the bruises at his jaw stand out, making the mud under his nails visible. Ned had not slept. His leg throbbed. His thoughts were knives. Catelyn stood to the side, rigid as a drawn bow. Brynden leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. 2 guards waited by the door, silent. Jaime watched Ned as if he were trying to decide which story he belonged to. "You look worse than the last time I saw you," he said lightly. Ned did not answer at once. He stepped closer until the lantern's glow filled Jaime's eyes. "Where is my daughter?" he asked. Jaime's smile thinned. "In King's Landing," he said. "Safe, I'm sure. Your queen likes pretty things." Catelyn made a sound, low and furious. Ned held up a hand without looking at her. His gaze did not leave Jaime. "You pushed my son from a tower," Ned said softly. Jaime's eyes flickered. Not guilt. Something like irritation, like a man reminded of a debt he'd hoped forgotten. "He saw," Jaime replied. "He was 7, Ned said. Jaime shrugged as much as the chains allowed. "He climbed. He fell. Children do that." Ned's hand tightened on the lantern handle until his knuckles ached. For a heartbeat, he imagined smashing the lantern into Jaime's face, setting oil and hair and arrogance alight. He imagined drawing ice, though ice was far away in the north, and ending the Kingslayer's life in one clean swing. Then he saw Sansa's face in his mind and forced the rage down until it became something usable. "You will write to Cersei Lannister," Ned said. "You will tell her you are alive. You will tell her that if she wishes you to remain alive, she will treat my daughter well." Jaime laughed softly. "You think she listens to me?" "She listens to what she values," Ned replied. "And she values you." Jaime's gaze sharpened, amusement fading. "And what do you value, Lord Stark?" he asked.
Honor?
"Law, a dead king's parchment." His mouth curved. "Or your daughter?" Ned felt the question land like a blade in his gut. Catelyn stepped forward then, unable to hold herself any longer. "You will be exchanged," she said, voice trembling with fury. "Jaime Lannister for Sansa Stark. For my daughter." Jaime looked at her, and something in his eyes warmed. An old familiarity, perhaps the memory of Riverrun when they were all younger, before the world rotted. "Lady Stark," he said almost gently, "if you think your daughter is worth more to the Queen than I am, you haven't been paying attention." Catelyn's face flushed. "Then you will rot here," she snapped. "Until she learns." Jaime's smile returned, thin and cruel. "Rotting is for men without stories," he said. "I have too many." Ned leaned in, close enough that Jaime could smell him. Rain, sweat, steel. "Listen to me," Ned said, and his voice was quiet as falling snow. "Your stories are nothing to me. You are a hostage, a means. You will do what I require, or I will send your head to your sister in a box." For the first time, Jaime's eyes widened a fraction. Not fear of death, Jaime Lannister had never seemed afraid to die, but surprise. Surprise that Ned Stark could speak such words and mean them. Brynden Tully's mouth curled, satisfied. Jaime studied Ned's face for a long moment, as if searching for the seam where honor ended and necessity began. Then he exhaled, slow. "Bring me ink," he said. Catelyn's breath hitched. Ned did not soften. He nodded to the guards. As they left, Jaime's gaze followed them, thoughtful now. "Tell me," he said, voice low, "did Robert die cursing my name?" Ned's eyes hardened. "Robert died cursing the world," he said. "And you are a part of it." Jaime's smile flickered, then steadied into something unreadable. "Then we're both trapped," he murmured. "Aren't we?" Ned turned away before he could answer, because the answer tasted too much like truth. The Green Fork became a graveyard before the sun could even pretend to rise. Ned was not there. He felt that absence like an ache. He had sent Roose Bolton with the decoy force as planned, watched the Pale Lord ride out with a calm that looked almost like peace. Ned had watched men follow Roose into the rain with shoulders squared and faces set, believing they marched toward Tywin Lannister and glory. He knew better. They marched toward pain. Useful pain purchased to pin Tywin in place while Robb struck elsewhere. War demanded such purchases. Honor hated them. The news came by courier, soaked through, eyes wild. They met, the man gasped, stumbling into Riverrun's yard where Robb's men trained in the mud. At the Green Fork, Tywin's host, bigger than we thought. Heavy horse, mountain men. Robb's face went still. And Roose? He demanded. The courier swallowed. He held, he said. He held as long as he could. But the lions? His voice broke. So many. Ned stood beside Robb, hand on his son's shoulder, feeling the boy's tension like a drawn bowstring. Tell us, Ned said, voice steady. The courier's words came out in fragments, ragged as the battle itself. The mud swallowed boots. The rain turned bowstrings heavy. The Lannister horse crashed like a wave into northern spears and broke them by sheer weight. Men screamed. Men drowned in mud with their mouths open. Roose Bolton's banners held, grim, relentless, until even grimness could not stop steel. They pulled back. The courier finished, voice thin. Roose Bolton ordered a retreat, not a rout, a retreat. He blinked hard, rainwater or tears running down his cheeks. But we lost many. Ned's stomach tightened. He saw their faces without meaning to. Boys from the north who had never seen the Riverlands before. Men who had kissed wives in Winterfell's shadow and promised to return with Lannister gold. Now they lay in southern mud, feeding crows. Robb's fist clenched. Did Tywin pursue? He asked. The courier shook his head. No, he said, almost disbelieving. He held, like he expected you to come. Ned's gaze sharpened. Tywin Lannister was not a man to miss an advantage. If he did not pursue, it meant he thought pursuit was the wrong move. It meant he suspected something. It meant he was not as blind as pride might make him. Or it meant he had received other news. As if summoned by the thought, another rider arrived, mud up to his knees, his horse lathered. He carried a wrapped bundle and a letter sealed in crimson wax. Ned took it before Robb could. His fingers felt clumsy around the seal, as if they belonged to another man. He broke it. The letter was from King's Landing. Not from Cersei. Not from Joffrey. From Peter Baelish. Ned's jaw tightened as he read the smooth, mocking words. The message was simple enough, buried beneath politeness like a knife in velvet. Lady Sansa Stark remained in the Red Keep. She was well as any songbird in a cage. The Queen wished to know if Lord Eddard Stark had truly returned from death, or if the North merely played games. At the bottom, a postscript, written as if in idle thought. The boy king is in a splendid mood. He asks about heads. Ned crushed the parchment in his fist. Robb watched him, eyes narrowing. What? He demanded. Ned forced himself to breathe. They know, he said. Catelyn appeared at the edge of the yard, drawn by the tension like a moth to flame. Arya lingered behind her, eyes sharp and restless. They know I'm alive, Ned said, and the words tasted like iron. And Tywin Lannister may know Jaime is taken. Robb's lips pulled back, a flash of wolf. Good, he said. Let him choke on it. Ned stared out into the rain, imagining Tywin's mind moving like a calculating blade. Jaime captured. Roose bloodied. The North not where it was expected. Stannis declaring. Renly gathering. 1,000 pieces shifting on the board. Tywin Lannister would not panic. He would not rage. He would choose the move that cost his enemies the most. Ned felt the weight of the dead from the Green Fork settle onto his shoulders, and he knew there would be more. War had begun to take its due. Sansa Stark learned quickly that hope could be a weapon used against you. The Red Keep had never seemed so beautiful as it did when she first arrived. Stone glowing in sunlight, tapestries bright with heroic scenes, halls filled with music and laughter. Now the same halls were quieter. The beauty felt like paint overwrought. The smiles felt like masks. They kept her in chambers that were warm and gilded, as if softness could make her forget she was trapped. They dressed her in fine gowns and braided her hair with ribbons, as if she were still a girl in a song waiting for her prince. Her prince stood behind her now with his hand on her shoulder like a chain. "Right?" Joffrey Baratheon said, voice bored. "Tell your brother to stop being foolish." Sansa's fingers tightened around the quill until they ached. The parchment on the desk was blank but for the first line, already written in a clerk's neat hand, to Robb Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Lord, the word screamed inside her. Robb was not supposed to be a lord. Robb was supposed to be her brother, laughing in Winterfell's yard, throwing snowballs at Bran. Winterfell was supposed to be home. Cersei Lannister sat in a chair near the hearth, a goblet in her hand. She looked very calm, very composed, as if this were a lesson in courtesy rather than the breaking of a girl's will. "Your father has returned," Cersei said lightly, watching Sansa's face. "Isn't that a marvel?" "I would have called it impossible." Sansa's breath caught. Her heart surged so hard she thought it might leap out of her chest. Returned. Alive. The word was a candle flaring in a deep cave. "Do not look so pleased," Joffrey snapped, squeezing her shoulder. "He is a traitor." Sansa's eyes stung. She kept her face down, staring at the parchment until the ink blurred. "My father," she began, then swallowed. Cersei smiled. "Yes," she said, "your father, Eddard Stark. The man who would steal my son's throne." She leaned forward slightly, green eyes bright. "You will tell your brother that your father may live, if your brother behaves." Sansa's throat tightened. Hope twisted in her belly, becoming something sharp. It was a trap, she knew. Every part of her knew. Yet the thought of her father breathing somewhere beneath the same sky, of his hand on her head, his voice telling her to be brave, made her want to sob. Tyrion Lannister stood near the door, arms folded, his expression dark. He watched Joffrey with a look that was almost hatred. When Sansa's gaze flicked toward him, he looked away quickly, as if ashamed to be seen caring. "Tell him to swear fealty," Joffrey said. "Tell him to send your little wolf sister back too. I want her head, father says. He says she stabbed a guard." Sansa's stomach dropped. Arya. She had not seen Arya since that day in the yard, since the chaos, since the screams. They told her Arya was missing. They told her Arya would be found. They told her many things. Sandor Clegane stood by the wall, silent. His burnt face was unreadable. His eyes, though, watched Sansa like a man watching a storm he could not stop. "Right?" Cersei said again, softer. "And remember, words can save lives." Sansa's hand trembled as she dipped the quill. She could feel Joffrey's fingers pressing down. She could feel the queen's gaze like ice. She could feel the walls of the room, the weight of the castle, the weight of the city, all pressing her toward obedience. She began to write. "Robb," she wrote, and the ink looked too dark on the white page. "Robb, my dearest brother." Her breath hitched. She wanted to write, "Father is alive. Come for me. Kill them all." She wanted to write, "I am so afraid." Instead, she wrote what they demanded, each word tasting like swallowing stones. She wrote of fealty, of mercy, of the king's kindness. She wrote of her father's life hanging by a thread that could be cut at any moment. As she wrote, she felt something inside her shift. Quiet thing. Not strength, not exactly. Something colder. Something that watched and remembered. When she finished, Joffrey snatched the parchment and skimmed it, lips curling. "Good," he said, and the praise made Sansa feel sick. "See? You can be useful." Cersei rose, smoothing her gown. "Send it," she ordered. The parchment left the room like a piece of Sansa's soul torn free and carried away. When the door shut behind them, Sansa sat alone at the desk, fingers stained with ink. She stared at the empty space where her letter had been and tried to breathe. Outside the window, King's Landing smoked beneath a gray sky. Sansa pressed her forehead to the cool wood of the desk and whispered her father's name into the silence. Not as a prayer to gods, but as a promise to herself. Hold on. Sansa's handwriting was neat even when forced. Ned recognized it instantly. The careful curves, the way she formed her letters as if each one mattered. The sight of it made his chest ache. It was as if her hand reached through enemy walls and touched him with a tremble. He read the letter once without breathing. Then again, slower, tasting the hidden meaning behind the words they had made her write. The message was what Cersei wanted. Swear fealty, lay down arms, accept Joffrey Baratheon as king. Promised mercy like a sweet fruit that would rot in the mouth. It spoke of Sansa being safe, of kindness, of hope. Hope. Ned's fingers tightened until the parchment crumpled. He forced himself to smooth it out, as if he could undo the violence done to his daughter's words. Robb paced the length of the tent, boots sinking slightly into damp ground beneath the rugs. She's their prisoner, he snarled. They're using her like a shield. Catelyn sat with her spine straight, her hand pressed over her mouth as if holding herself together physically. Her eyes were bright, but no tears fell. She did what she could, she whispered. She's trying to save him. Save you. Save herself. Arya hovered near the tent flap, half shadow, half knife. Her face was tight with fury. I'd rather die than write that, she muttered. Ned looked at her sharply. No, he said. You would rather live. That is why you are here. He softened his voice, just a fraction. And that is why Sansa wrote it. Arya's eyes flashed, but she did not argue. She did not need to. The truth was heavy enough without words. Brynden Tully tapped the map. A hostage can be traded, he said. A hostage can also be killed. Catelyn flinched as if struck. Ned felt the old ice settle in his veins. They will not kill her while they believe it buys them something, he said. They will threaten. They will squeeze. But they will not cut their own chain unless they must. And if they must? Robb demanded, stopping his pacing long enough to look at Ned, eyes raw. If Joffrey decides he wants a head again? Ned's mind flashed to Peter Baelish's note, to the words about spectacle. He exhaled slowly. Then we make it so costly that even a boy understands, he said. Robb's mouth twisted. How? Ned stared at the map until the lines blurred into rivers of blood. We make the realm see him, he said. Not as king, as bastard, as usurper. He lifted Stannis' letter from where it lay by the lamp, its black wax seal broken. We declare for Stannis Baratheon openly, to every lord who will listen. We spread the truth faster than they can smother it. Catelyn's voice was small. And Sansa? Ned's chest tightened. He looked at her, his wife, fiercer than any sword in her grief, and felt the weight of every promise he had ever made. We take her back, he said simply. How? Arya demanded, stepping forward. We can't just ride into the Red Keep. No, Ned agreed. We cannot. Robb leaned over the map, finger tracing south. If Stannis sails for King's Landing, he said slowly, and we hold Tywin here, keep him from returning to the city, then the capital might fall. Ned met his son's gaze, and for a heartbeat he saw the man Robb was becoming. Yes, Ned said. If Stannis takes the city, he will have Sansa too, alive if we have done our work. Brynden's eyes narrowed. And Renly Baratheon? He asked. He gathers men like a harvest. If he marches north instead of Stannis, you'll have another king to contend with. Ned's jaw tightened. Renly was a bright flame, beautiful, popular, dangerous. We cannot fight all of them, he admitted. Not at once. Robb's eyes were hard. Then we make them stop fighting each other, he said. Catelyn's gaze lifted, sharp. You want to bargain with kings? She said, half bitter, half impressed. Ned's thoughts turned to Stannis' hard words, to Renly's charm, to the realm's hunger for easy answers. We send you, he said to Catelyn, and watched her stiffen. To Renly Baratheon. Speak for us. Speak for the truth. Speak for Sansa. Catelyn's mouth tightened. I will go, she said, and there was iron in it. Ned reached for her hand, squeezing once. Be careful, he murmured. Catelyn's eyes held his. I have been careful, she whispered. It did not save us. Outside the tent, the rain began again, soft and relentless. Ned listened to it and thought of King's Landing's walls, of Sansa's ink-stained fingers, of a boy king's smile. He folded Sansa's letter carefully, as if treating it gently could reach across distance and touch her. Then he tucked it into his coat near his heart. "We move," Ned said. "We do not bend, and we do not break." The river carried messages better than ravens, if you knew where to listen. Ned met Davos Seaworth at a dock that smelled of wet wood and fish, where fog rolled thick off the water and muffled the world into whispers. Torches burned low, their flames shivering in the damp. Brynden Tully stood beside Ned like a silent threat, hand near his sword, eyes scanning the darkness for movement. The man who stepped from the boat was not a lord. His cloak was plain, his boots worn, his hands rough. Yet he held himself with a steady dignity that Ned recognized. Men who had earned their place did not need silk to prove it. "Lord Eddard Stark," Davos said, bowing his head. His voice held the salt of the sea. "I am Davos Seaworth." "I know your name," Ned replied. "Stannis Baratheon trusts you." Davos's mouth tightened. "He trusts few," he admitted. "But he trusts me to carry words without twisting them." He held out a letter sealed in black wax stamped with the crowned stag and the flaming heart. The sight of that heart again made Ned's skin prickle. Ned took it and broke the seal. The letter was short. Stannis demanded fealty. Stannis promised justice. Stannis declared that those who supported the usurpers would be punished without mercy. At the bottom, in the same hard hand, one line stood out like a nail driven into wood. "I will not barter with traitors. I will accept obedience."
Ned exhaled slowly.
"He is himself," he murmured. Davos watched him carefully. "He is the rightful king," he said, and there was no doubt in it. "And he means to take what is his." "And the Red Woman?" Brynden asked bluntly. Davos's jaw tightened. "Melisandre of Ashai," he said. "She serves the Lord of Light. She has influence." Ned folded the letter. "Influence," he repeated, tasting the danger. He had seen too much of men who claimed gods at their backs. Gods made convenient shields for cruelty. Davos stepped closer, lowering his voice. "My king knows you speak truth," he said. "He knows you held Robert's will. He knows you were betrayed." A flicker of something like respect crossed his face. "He knows you have taken Jaime Lannister." Ned's gaze sharpened. "Then Tywin knows too." Davos nodded once. "Likely." Ned looked out over the foggy water, listening to the river's quiet rush. The world felt narrowed to choices again, always choices. "Tell Stannis Baratheon this," Ned said. "The North will stand for the rightful king. Not because we love him, but because the realm must not be built on lies." Davos's shoulders eased, just a fraction. "He will want you to say it plainly," he warned, "in words that leave no room for doubt." Ned met his eyes. "Then write this," he said, and the words came like steel drawn. "Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, declares for Stannis Baratheon, first of his name, rightful king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men." Brynden gave a low grunt of approval. Davos's eyes held Ned's for a long moment, measuring. Then he nodded. "I will carry it," he said. He hesitated, then added softer. "And the girl? Lady Sansa Stark." Ned's throat tightened. "She lives," he said, because he had to believe it. Stannis must take King's Landing quickly, before a boy's cruelty turns into something irreversible. Davos's face darkened. "My king means to sail soon," he said. "But storms gather. Men are slow to commit. Renly Baratheon steals banners that should fly for Stannis." He spat into the river, the gesture angry and helpless. "The realm is a knot, and knots take cutting." Ned's gaze dropped to the flaming heart on the broken seal. "Tell your king that cutting knots can bleed hands," he said. Davos's mouth tightened. He said. "He bleeds often. He rarely notices." A sound drifted through the fog. A distant splash, perhaps a fish, perhaps something else. Brynden's hand went to his sword. Ned held still. "Go," Ned said to Davos. "And tell Stannis Baratheon this as well. If he takes the city, he must not kill my daughter to make a point." Davos's eyes widened slightly. "My king is not," he began, then stopped. He knew better than to promise what he could not guarantee. "I will tell him," he said instead, "and I will pray you are right about her living." Ned watched Davos climb back into the boat and push off into the fog. The river swallowed him, leaving only torchlight and the taste of salt. Brynden exhaled. "Well," he said, "you've chosen your king." Ned stared into the dark water. "No," he said quietly, "I've chosen my war." Renly Baratheon's camp looked like a tourney that had mistaken itself for a war. Catelyn rode into it with rain in her hair and mud on her hem, and she felt the eyes on her immediately, curious, hungry, amused. Pavilions stretched across the fields like a bright city made of silk. Banners snapped in the wind. Golden roses, crowned stags, bright colors that seemed to mock the gray world beyond. Knights rode in polished mail that shone even under cloud cover. Men laughed. Men drank. Men flirted with death as if it were a pretty girl. It made Catelyn's stomach turn. They led her to Renly's tent, and the sight within was worse. Candles burned by the hundreds, turning the air warm and sweet with wax. Fine food covered tables. Minstrels plucked soft music as if soothing a lady to sleep. Renly Baratheon sat on a chair draped in green and gold, wearing a crown that looked more like decoration than burden. He was handsome as ever, his dark hair glossy, his smile easy. Beside him stood Margaery Tyrell, her beauty calm and assured, her eyes bright with calculation hidden behind serenity. Behind them, like a shield given human shape, stood Brienne of Tarth. Tall, broad, her blue armor plain compared to the glitter around her, her face set with fierce devotion. Catelyn bowed the barest fraction. "Your grace," she said, and the words tasted strange. Grace was for gods and lawful kings. Renly was neither. Renly's smile widened. "Lady Stark," he said warmly. "Or should I say Lady Tully, welcome. You look as if you've ridden through a storm." "I have," Catelyn replied. Renly gestured lazily. "Bring her wine," he ordered, "and something to eat. Our guest must be starving." "I did not come for wine," Catelyn said. Renly's eyes glittered. "No," he agreed. "You came for war." Catelyn stepped closer, ignoring the murmurs behind her. "I came for peace," she said, and her voice cut through the candle-warm air like a cold blade. "My husband lives. Eddard Stark has returned." The tent shifted. Whispers rippled. Renly's smile faltered for the first time, surprise flashing across his face. "Lives?" Renly echoed, almost delighted. "Well, that is unexpected." "Unexpected is what this realm has become," Catelyn said. "He escaped King's Landing. He has taken Jaime Lannister." Renly leaned forward, interest sharpening. "Jaime?" he said, and the name carried relish. "That's a prize. Tywin will howl." "He already does," Catelyn replied. "And while you feast here, the Riverlands burn." Margaery's smile did not move, but her eyes flicked to Renly's with a subtle warning. Brienne's jaw tightened, as if insult to Renly were insult to the gods. Renly sighed theatrically. "You paint it so grimly, Lady Stark. War is grim, yes, but it is also opportunity." He spread his hands. "Robert is dead. Joffrey is a monster. Stannis is a stone. I am..." He smiled again, charming as sunlight. "I am what the realm can love." Catelyn's voice hardened. "The realm needs law." Renly's eyes cooled. "Law?" he said, amused. "You mean Stannis?" "Yes," Catelyn said. "Stannis Baratheon is Robert's heir. Eddard Stark declares for him." Renly's smile became thinner, more dangerous. "Eddard Stark is a good man," he said. "I always liked him, but good men are not always wise." He leaned back, crown glinting. "Tell your husband this. I have the men. I have the banners. I have the Tyrells. If he declares for me instead, I will march on King's Landing and break the lion's teeth. I will keep his daughter safe. I will. You will steal your brother's throne. Catelyn cut in. Renly's eyes flashed. My brother would steal the realm's future, he snapped, the warmth slipping away. Then he smoothed his expression again, as if anger were an ugly stain. Lady Stark, he said softly, Stannis will burn this kingdom down to prove a point. He will punish, 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 until even the small folk spit at his name. I will rule with smiles. Catelyn thought of Sansa, trapped behind smiles sharp as knives. Smiles do not feed the dead, she said. Renly leaned forward again, voice lowering. And what of your son? He asked. Robb Stark, the young wolf. He marches south with a crown in his future whether he wants it or not. If he joins me, I can give him what he wants most. Safety for his people, vengeance on the Lannisters, and your daughter returned. His eyes gleamed. If he joins Stannis, he will bleed for a king who will never thank him. Catelyn's heart hammered. The offer was tempting in its simplicity. It smelled like honey. Honey could hide poison. I did not come to bargain for crowns, she said. I came to beg you to stop this madness. She looked at Brienne then, saw the fierce devotion in the woman's eyes, saw the way Brienne's whole body angled toward Renly, as if ready to die to keep him breathing. Your Grace, Catelyn said, turning back to Renly. My husband lives because men chose to help him, choose to help the realm now. Meet Stannis Baratheon. Speak, agree, end this before it consumes everything. Renly's mouth curved, half amusement, half contempt. Meet him, he said. He would rather see me dead. Catelyn held his gaze. Then prove him wrong. For a moment, Renly's expression went distant, as if he were seeing the path ahead. Glory, blood, victory, or ruin. Then he laughed lightly. Very well, he said. I will meet him. His eyes hardened, but not to bend. Marjorie's hand tightened on his arm. A subtle warning. Renly ignored it. Catelyn's stomach sank. She had won a meeting, not a peace. Outside the pavilion, thunder rolled low and distant, and Catelyn felt as if she had stepped into a room where a sword hung from the ceiling by a single frayed rope. Storm's end loomed like a threat given stone. The sea wind cut hard, carrying salt and the promise of rain. Torches snapped and guttered as if the night itself tried to swallow their light. Catelyn stood between two camps and felt the pull of them like opposing tides. Renly's bright, laughing army behind her, Stannis' dark, silent men ahead. Renly Baratheon arrived first, mounted and gleaming, his crown catching torchlight. He looked every inch a king in a song. Brienne of Tarth rode behind him, her face set, her eyes fierce, her armor plain and honest amid the glitter. Then Stannis Baratheon appeared from the darkness like a judgment made flesh. He wore dark armor that drank the light. His face was gaunt, his eyes hard, his mouth a thin line carved by bitterness. Davos Seaworth stood close at his shoulder, quieter, humbler, but with a steadiness that felt like a true anchor in storm seas. And behind Stannis, like a stain of red against the night, came Melisandre of Ass High. Her gown moved with the wind as if alive. Her hair was a dark spill. Her eyes, red in torchlight or perhaps simply reflecting it, seemed to look through men rather than at them. Catelyn's skin prickled. She did not believe in magic, yet she believed in fear, and this woman carried it like perfume. Renly dismounted with theatrical ease. Brother, he called, you look grim. Have you forgotten how to smile? Stannis' gaze did not flicker. You are not my brother, he said, and his voice was a blade. You are a thief. Renly laughed. Thief? I take what the realm needs. You take what is mine, Stannis snapped, stepping forward. By law, by right. Law, Renly repeated, amused. You cling to it like a drunk clings to a cup. Stannis' mouth tightened. Yield, he said. Bend the knee. I will name you my heir until I have a son. The offer, spoken so starkly, made Renly's smile falter for half a heartbeat. Catelyn saw it. Brienne saw it too, her eyes widened, hopeful. Then Renly's smile returned, brighter, crueler. "Name me your heir," he said. "How generous. And when will you have a son, Stannis?" "When the sun rises in the west." A murmur ran through Renly's knights, half laughter, half tension. Stannis's men did not laugh. They did not move. They watched like men waiting for a command that might send them into death. Catelyn stepped forward, voice tight. "Your graces," she said. "The realm bleeds. The Lannisters hold the capital. Joffrey Baratheon. Joffrey is a bastard." Stannis cut in, the words like stones thrown. "Born of incest. Eddard Stark knows it. He has declared for me." Renly's eyes narrowed. "So I've heard," he said, and the charm in his voice cooled. "Eddard Stark lives, then. Pity. His honor will get him killed twice." Catelyn felt anger flare. "His honor has saved lives," she snapped. "Including his own. Including mine." Stannis's eyes did not soften. "I am taking what is mine," he said. Renly's smile returned. "And I am taking what I can," he replied. Catelyn looked from one brother to the other and saw the truth settle like lead. Neither would bend. Both would break the realm rather than admit defeat. The wind rose and torchlight flickered hard. In that flicker, Catelyn saw shadows move strangely at the edge of light. Too thick, too deliberate, as if the darkness itself leaned closer to listen. Melisandre's eyes fixed on Renly. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. Davos Seaworth shifted uneasily, his gaze dropping to the ground as if he feared what it might birth. Brienne's hand tightened on her sword hilt, knuckles white. Renly lifted his chin, laughter in his throat despite the cold. "Come the morning," he said, voice ringing. "You will bend the knee to me, Stannis, or you will die." Stannis's face was stone. "I will never bend," he said. The torches hissed in the wind, and somewhere in the darkness beyond them, something moved. Silent, patient, inevitable, as if the night had chosen its own king.